Hello, I'm Rachel Hoppy, and I'm here to talk to you today about communities, community management, and the future of work. Since 2009, when I started the Community Roundtable, and now at Engaged Organizations, I have been studying communities because I believe they hold the key to the future of organizations because of their power to enable human potential. A decade ago at the Enterprise 2.0 conference, I presented this slide saying a perfect storm of change is coming. I think we can probably all agree that it's here. The pace of change is dizzying, and with it has increased our anxiety, confusion, and ironically, too often, isolation. We have endless novelty and limited security. And often it feels like we don't even know what is wrong, let alone how to fix it. Individuals are facing a deluge of information coming at them from all angles. Long ago, when the mail, telegraph, and telephone became available, it was exciting because it allowed people to stay connected. Fast forward, and we find ourselves buried in different channels, each with their own network effect. The more people in any given network, the more valuable that network is. With so many networks, however, that value has decreased for each as people make their own choices about where to engage. It is chaotic and worse than having one overflowing inbox. Thanks to SaaS models, new business applications, content sites, team chat channels, and community platforms seem to pop up every day at work. Very few of these have been rationalized or deployed with any business or management strategy. Who isn't overwhelmed? Individuals are drowning. They have, or feel like they have, the responsibility to keep up, but with little control to manage their own communications environment. The consequences for organizations are dire. Employees are drowning. Customers feel like organizations are impenetrable, impossible to connect with a real human. Managers are just trying to keep up. And meanwhile, IT, HR, and executives tend to look at their organizations as abstractions, and they see organized structures and boxes, and none of the chaos beneath. And that was before COVID hit. Suddenly, many of us were working remotely. Employees quickly adapted and adopted new technology, which was amazing. But no one stopped to consider the best uses of digital tools and platforms. So we changed where we worked, but not how we worked. On their own, digital tools are not enough to change the way we work in ways that optimize the potential of those digital platforms. Our organizational governance is still largely dominated by hierarchical governance, which resists change and is subject to the will of a minority. The bottlenecks inherent in hierarchies leave them vulnerable to the manipulation of information and make it easy to use information as a weapon. The operational model throttles the potential of digital platforms because ultimately it is what dictates the terms of employment. In that context, engagement often isn't worth it. People have had enough. COVID was a tipping point. 30% of employees plan to switch jobs in the next 12 months, and that's even higher for Gen Z. Executives are starting to pay attention. Well, except for the 22% of CEOs who just want to get people back to the office. The CEOs who do understand that the way organizations work needs to change are faced with organizations that are really hard to change because of the hierarchical model and its impact on engagement. They are faced with a chicken and egg challenge. Employees are disengaged, And yet, lasting change requires engagement. How can organizations create a governance structure that feels like a trellis instead of a cage? One that will engage, support, and inspire employees so that they joyfully pursue new ideas and opportunities. The answer lies in the same structure upon which new communications technology is built: a network. Networked governance rewards connection, but it also rewards adaptation and individual agency. This is where communities come into the picture. Communities are trusted networks of people. The higher the trust and the more people a network has, the more value it generates in the following ways: by increasing the speed of information, by developing shared ownership, and finally, by aligning and norming behaviors. Trust, network size, shared ownership, and new behaviors are what increase the speed of change. You can see this dynamic in the rate of new technology adoption over the last century. As communications networks increased in size, connection, ease of collaboration, and trust, adoption rates sped up. Essentially, the world became a more effective community. Data from the State of Community Management research shows a very similar dynamic. Communities with little reaccess or reuse of information, perhaps because of their size or their level of trust, have low growth in value. As the reuse of information increases because of size, connectedness, or trust, the growth of value increases more quickly, and the innovation S-curve becomes more pronounced. Community teams who are working to create more community-centric cultures inside of organizations report corroborating data in the direct business outcomes that their community programs generate. The biggest direct impact of community programs is communications efficiency, which is seen by 78%. Not surprising given the nature of communities. What is more surprising is that 69% of community programs have a direct impact on culture change. We have seen this fairly consistently in the data over the last few years. Additionally, 68% of community programs report that they are very or extremely effective at supporting behavior change. For CEOs looking for new approaches to support organizational change, investing in community programs makes a lot of sense. Unlike customer community teams, internal enterprise community programs are typically a centralized team that supports business groups in using community approaches effectively. Community teams also create the central standards and services that increase the ability for the organization to collaborate and innovate. For organizations that have enterprise community teams, the data reflect this. 91% of teams are acting as centers of excellence for their organizations, although only 43% are specifically tasked or resourced with that intent. This is also reflected in how networked these teams are, including multiple constituencies in strategic decision-making, training opportunities, and progress reporting. Enterprise community teams are still relatively small, and 26% of them have no full-time staff. Another 36% only have one full-time team member and rely, on average, on 9 part-time staff pulled from other areas of the business. However, teams that are formally structured as centers of excellence only have 2.5 full-time staff on average. Given the complexity of the work they do, it is not surprising that 29% of enterprise community teams report not having enough resources as their biggest challenge. Enterprise community teams are starting to evolve into what I think of as centralized ops teams. These teams are designed to address some critical gaps in the use of technology.
gaps created by the overwhelming pile of technology that is now used in most organizations. Community ops teams act like a cross between an internal consulting group, an ongoing center of excellence, and a governance group that maintains standards. The goal of these groups is to help business units, communities, teams, and individuals understand how best to structure their work, use the most effective tools and systems, and maintain a network of trusted relationships that will support them as they progress in their career. This group's biggest and ongoing task is to ensure that the governance of the organization is collectively vetted, updated as needed, and structured so that everyone understands agreed-to boundaries and, when needed, enforces those boundaries. Next, this group functions as a tiger team that can go into business units, assess their work patterns, facilitate agreement on how they want to work together, and coach managers and executives. These decisions are then translated into designed experiences that support it. Lastly, the community ops teams supports behavior change through direct community management initially, and then guidance and resources as the business unit takes on more community management responsibilities itself. Let's go through a few examples of what this might look like. One of the biggest roles these community ops teams play is to help business groups understand how to align their work needs and patterns with their communications technology and behaviors. By collaborating together, they help the group decide which networked technologies will be used in different circumstances, and in doing so, maximize the team's productivity and value. The result of that conversation might look something like this. This chart shows what channels are ideal, okay, and not appropriate for different types of communications, and it helps individuals better understand how to align with the group. This type of guidance helps reduce duplication across channels and decreases the noise in each. Another role these community ops teams play is to support changes to management, transforming it from oversight and control of work to enabling good work practices, coaching teams, and rewarding positive change. This transforms the routines, rituals, and gatherings of traditional work and orients these events toward connection, deep conversation, and sharing of expertise. Done well, it also makes more of the routine asynchronous and opt-in, leaving individuals more time to actually work. Perhaps the most important thing it does is that it makes building relationships and socializing explicit rather than wrapping it into other meetings. By calling it out explicitly, it makes it not only okay, but encouraged, and reflects the importance of relationships to trust and collaboration, and it doesn't leave it to chance. This transformation of management into what many currently think of as community management helps change not just where work is done, but how work is done. The 2021 State of Community Management data shows that community approaches accelerate the work behaviors that help increase the speed and effectiveness of knowledge work. Community programs see an increase in the size of employee networks, engagement with executives, willingness to be transparent, more asynchronous work, and more agile work practices, all of which make collaboration more valuable and efficient. Most importantly, these changes to work behaviors result in shared value, benefiting both the organization and the individual employee. And that is what makes the change more likely to stick. This is why I think community management is the future of all management. I have seen amazing results by shifting how we think of work and management, and in changing how work works. What if, in making work more flexible and collaborative, we could reduce stress? What if we could even bring joy back to work? What could we do then? Thank you for letting me share in your journey and in considering how community approaches can transform how the world works. I want a world where we all feel valued, have meaningful work to do, and find joy in collaborating with others while we create value for the world. If you would like to stay in touch, please reach out, and thank you again.